So in this segment, we're going to discuss Labour's insane right-wing pivot towards on immigration. They did say they were going to cut immigration during the election, so this isn't really that much of a surprise. The only problem is if you talk about the massive need for economic growth and you decide to cut immigration, good luck with that, guys. Good luck. So this is from Yvette Cooper. I'll be discussing the Starmer stuff. That video will come out beforehand because I've got time today.
Essentially, unless someone has a degree-level job, that they are unlikely to receive a work visa.
That is the change to the skilled work visa that we're bringing in. There will be a temporary shortage list because, of course, there are some really important sectors where there are shortages in particular areas. But the other change will be this is a temporary shortage list, and in any of those shortage areas, there needs to be some requirements for training and for workforce development here in the UK. That hasn't happened before. Construction's a good example.
Yes.
So we know that we need construction workers.
And you want to build a lot of houses.
Exactly. But what we should be doing is training here in the UK.
So are you going to put the money up to do that kind of stuff? Because again, the amount of apprenticeships and people like that get paid is a joke. The amount carers in the UK get paid is a joke. So the question is, are you going to do anything in those areas to really help people? Using further education colleges and trade schools. Are you going to do more to address that?
Mm-hmm. So alongside saying that construction would be on the temporary shortage list, what we're also doing is Bridget Phillipson set out proposals to train 60,000 more construction workers so that we've got that big focus.
Yeah, again, unless you pay apprentices properly, it doesn't really help that much. In a situation where Labour has expressed proposals, solutions regarding cuts to adult social skills budgets and potential budget issues in higher education. So they've not, Labour cut to adult skills budget, shockingly cruel, says the UCU. So, are they going to help people here? Are they going to do more training here? The answer is no. Their proposed cuts to education will be the worst in a generation. So you want to train more people here, you want to skill up effectively, and then you're making cuts to education. You're making cuts to the adult skills budget. So how does that make sense? All you're doing is going to hamper businesses even more than you have done already. And I'm not one of these people super pro business. Businesses exploit workers, how they make profit. I'm not one of those people who are, I'm a big fan of small businesses. This effectively is a small business, but it's just me. So it's fine. But you're making cuts. You're making cuts to schools, cuts to education, cuts to adult learning. How are you going to get people to train here? Businesses are waiting for the government to train people, and the government are waiting for businesses to train people. I think it should be down to the government to give people training, so then it gives them more opportunities when it comes to employers. It doesn't lock them down to crappy contracts and things like that. It doesn't make sense. There is a fund for this, the Adult Skills Fund, designed for helping people in England, but they're making cuts to it. It doesn't make sense. You got this really dumb point. She's trying to avoid talking about freedom of movement, and Goodall doing just a really awful job interviewing here.
So let's say I run a hospitality business in a part of the country which...
Oh, sorry, no, this is the wrong clip here. This is about people who can't hire British workers.
Has an older population, there aren't many younger people around, and they come to you and they say, Home Secretary, I really need to be able to recruit, but I can't recruit people from here. British people just don't want to do it. Your message to them is?
Well, we've had these sorts of labour market challenges for a long time, and what happened, what the Conservatives did was say, look, this is effectively a free market approach, so let's replace free movement with free market and say employers can recruit from wherever they want.
But if you've got no supply at home,
they don't have to increase pay, they don't have to take action.
It's not just supply at home, it's about geography as well. If you're, say for example, you're trying to expand your business in, say, Clacton, right, and there's mostly older people in some of these seaside areas, what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to hire more people?
Well, they don't have to take action to tackle those workforce issues. Instead, they can simply recruit from abroad. And what's happened is employer after employer after employer all over the country has just been able to recruit from abroad for any job that they wanted to do without any responsibility to look at, well, what are the workforce and the labour market problems here at home?
Unless you solve stuff like the living crisis, things like that, like the rental market. Why would I move to, I was looking at jobs elsewhere, right? Why would I move to somewhere like Birmingham, where I'm going to have to spend around half my salary on rent? For example, it doesn't make sense. I would make more money, I'd be contributing more to the exchequer, but my net amount would be lower than me living at home. So unless you deal with things like the rental market and other things like that, this argument of, you expecting people who are in this country to move and fill up jobs in other areas makes no sense.
And what are we going to do to tackle them? Should it be increasing their pay for that particular job? Should it be increasing training? Should it be working with people who, frankly, are out of work at the moment because there's been a big increase in UK residents who are inactive, who are out of work as well?
Maybe you look at, giving them more opportunities to actually skill up and looking at what do they actually want to do in life, rather than looking at as, there's a job vacancy in hospitality, you have to go in there and fill that vacancy because you're unemployed. Maybe ask them what they actually want to do and see if you can create opportunities for them. The free movement clip is just embarrassing from Goodall.
The thing I would say, though, about any of those proposals is there's a couple of bottom lines here, which is no return to free movement and also net migration must come down. That is the clear requirement.
Do you consider
so these visas, as far as I'm aware, for young people, it's like 3 years. So net immigration will go up and then it will come down potentially in the third year, depending on how many people come in and go.
EU Youth Mobility Scheme to be a component of free movement? You think it's an example of free movement?
Well, what you can't do is have a return to free movement.
Yeah, but would that be a component of free
I know you're trying to get me to...
It's so dumb. Like, freedom of movement is a completely different thing from a mobility scheme. We have mobility schemes with, I think it's Canada, New Zealand, and a couple other countries. So stupid. Do we have free movement with Canada? Grow up, Goodall.
Draw me onto the
I'm just genuinely interested in your view as to how you see it, because there's been a lot of speculation about it. Would you see a youth mobility scheme as an example of freedom of movement?
So, again, I think what you're trying to do is to sort of draw me into detailed discussion. No, we will not do a return to free movement or any kind of arrangement that is effectively free movement. We're clearly...
Yes, you've been very clear on this.
Would that be a youth mobility scheme?
No. I understand what you're trying to do, Lewis.
It's just embarrassing from him, and her discussing this with Koonsberg.
Let's think about, the NHS and the care sector. And the care sector has relied on foreign workers because they just haven't been able to get UK people to do the jobs. The Tories changed the rules, so there's already been a drop-off in the number of visas being given to care workers coming in from abroad. Do you want to cut that still further? Can you see a day even when you say no care workers should come in from abroad?
Yes, we do. And we're going to change those rules this year to prevent the care worker visa being used to recruit from abroad. So we will close, yes. But we will allow them to continue to extend visas and also to recruit from. There's more than 10,000 people who came on a care worker visa where the sponsorship visa was cancelled. Effectively, they came to jobs that weren't actually here.
That was a big problem in, when the Tories tried to kind of not fix the issue, but patch the issue. There was an issue with fake jobs being created and people making loads of money off finder's fees.
That were not of the proper standard. They are here, and care companies should be recruiting from that pool of people rather than recruiting from abroad. We are closing recruitment from abroad. That is a significant change, and we're doing it alongside saying we need to bring in a new fair pay agreement for care workers.
So you need to do the pay agreement before you make any of these moves, because you're not going to fill up domestic positions with British workers unless you do this first.
Because we saw that huge increase in care work recruitment from abroad, but without actually ever tackling the problems in the system in the care sector.
But there are already shortages in that sector.
Massive shortages.
Almost imagine somebody running a care home emailing us right now saying, I can't get staff. Where are they meant to get their staff from?
Well, we want them to recruit. We've got this pool of people who came as care workers. In good faith, they were recruited, but because there were no proper checks in place, because there were no proper standards, what instead happened was people were being exploited, really badly exploited. Those workers are still here. Care companies should be recruiting from those workers. They can also extend existing visas. They could recruit as well.
It's just nonsense. Honestly, you're just absolutely tanking this industry, this sector. But I think predominantly because older people vote Conservative. And so that's one of the issues. It's a bit ironic that, people keep voting Conservative to lower immigration when you have lots of these old people who are relying on support from people who've migrated here, like care workers.
A company that's hiring from abroad, if you're desperate to fill roles that British people aren't skilled enough to meet, well, then life is only going to get harder and more expensive. I was reading about the Crick Institute in one of the papers. I think something like 80% of their high-skilled workers come from abroad. £800,000 they have to spend on visas. Now, if Labour's overarching mantra is to deliver growth...
No, the thing is, like, this idea would just recruit people here. If they're spending 800, total 800k on visas, it's either it costs that much more to hire British workers here, or there's a real issue with like skills and geography in this country.
And it's all about growth, isn't it? No growth, no reforms, just cuts, cuts and more cuts. Then I'm just curious as how does making life for business harder and more expensive grow growth? But how many times have politicians talked up the idea of upskilling our workforce? How many times since Margaret Thatcher? Countless occasions, I'd suggest. And it's the failure by all those previous governments to get British workers upskilled, I'd argue.
What we should look at is how other countries train up their workers in terms of what do they offer them. America used to have the Jobs Corps, but I don't know if they still have that. But there are things that we can do as a country to skill people up, especially ones who are looking for new opportunities or out of work.
Thank you. That is what's opened the door to migration in the first place. Our economy at the moment needs foreign workers, and I suspect will do for years to come.
And it's a knacker business. That's what's going to happen here. Yeah, final clip. I think it's the final one in this situation, and we kind of discussed it already. No, there's two actually. But this goon here talking about how people are scared to talk about immigration, just ludicrous.
Of their birth than at any time in human history. The best estimates say that globally, 1 million immigrants and counting. Across the West, politics has become a battle between those who believe that the economy needs the skills and vigours that immigrants can bring, and those convinced that whatever incomers add to prosperity is dwarfed by what they consume. And to voters, many issues can be seen as a kind of migration equation. Too many immigrants.
It's the framing here, which is an abomination.
Too few homes.
Which again is because we don't build enough homes, and they're owned by people who just rent them out effectively. Like BlackRock are looking at massive investment in the UK. That tells you everything you need to know.
Workers, falling wages.
That's proven untrue as well.
More health tourists, fewer hospital beds.
Who's doing health tourism in the UK? Like, have you seen the waitlist, buddy? People go to like Indonesia, they go to Turkey for health tourism.
Whether justified or not, these are the stories.
Whether justified or not, I'm going to make up a load of things and then pretend it's, people are saying these things in like schools and hospitals and stuff, which is simply untrue. Like, this guy's a complete goon. And this final clip, this guy thinks you can train a care worker in a few weeks.
Labour in the care sector, for example, it only takes a few weeks to train somebody up. We should not be importing care workers. That was a huge mistake.
The reason they did that is because they want to increase the wages for care workers and actually look at how they can train people here domestically to do that role. They took the easy option because, again, if there was massive, if there were further problems in like their care industry, their voters would run away from them. So, it goes to show you that it's complete insanity. Labour had a freak out after the local elections. Criticism came in one of Starmer's better weeks in office. And so, Starmer faced a breakdown in party discipline after losing to Farage last week. One of the Red Wall Group, Winter Fuel and Disability Cuts. Disability Cut rebels politically agitated against Number 10. And so he's calling for calm, and that's why he's going down this road of just attacking people who want to emigrate here and who have emigrated here. Just absolute goon. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.